Hey, what are you doing? What's going on? What's happening with your face? How are you? Hey, it's Nick Digilio. How are you? Welcome to my videos. YouTube channel here. Check it out. Like, subscribe, tell your friends, tell your uncle, tell your neighbors. Over 170 some videos there. Also, donate on Patreon. Best way to help out. Don't be a dick. Donate. It helps. It really does help a lot. All the stuff I do, the videos that I provide, the reviews, all the cool things, it's all free. My podcast is also free, so if you want to help out, throw a little bucks my way to keep things going, and to show some appreciation. What you should do is donate. $3 a month, $5, $25 a month, $3 a month. What is that? That's a Snickers bar and a bottle of water. You can afford that. $3 a month. It's real easy to do. Patreon.com/NickDShow. Donate right now. Patreon.com/NickDShow. Helps out. $3 a month. You have no idea how it will help. So donate now or kick up your donation if you want to. So you should. That would be cool. You'd be a cool person if you did that, and it would help out a lot. So do it right now. Donate. Patreon.com/NickDShow. All right, and I mentioned my podcast, Nick D Podcast, Radio Misfits Network, RadioMisfits.com. Every Tuesday and every Friday, new episodes. Okay, so today, it's very early. I couldn't sleep, so I'm going to cut a couple of videos here and throw them up on the Patreon, and you will donate, patreon.com/NickDShow, and check them out. Today is the 40th anniversary of the release of Fast Times at Ridgemont High. Classic, right? Cameron Crowe's first script based on the book that he wrote, based on the story that he actually investigated as a Rolling Stone writer. We all know the story of Cameron Crowe. Cameron Crowe, young writer, 15 years old, 14 years old, starts writing for rock and roll magazines and, meets his idol and becomes a writer of rock and roll, an investigative journalist, and then he starts writing screenplays, and then his screenplays turn into movies, and his movies, he becomes a director, and then he goes on to be nominated for Academy Awards as an award-winning director who's directed some great films and written some really terrific movies, but he all started as some 13-year-old, 14-year-old little asshole who got a gig, freelance at first, and then writing for Rolling Stone, covering the world of rock and roll, and then that led to his film career. And a good film career it is. He's made some great movies. He's written some terrific movies. And this one, Fast Times at Ridgemont High, was based upon the investigation that he did as a young writer going back into high school and writing about the people in the high school and what was happening at that time in high school. Writing it all down, investigative journalists, people were shocked by the behavior, by the activities, by the way the modern teenager in the late 70s, early 80s was acting. And he put it all out there. Then they made a movie out of it, and it became a classic. It is considered a classic. Fast Times at Ridgemont High was released on August 13th, 1982. The same day as Friday the 13th Part 3 in 3D, which, by the way, is a better fucking movie than Fast Times at Ridgemont High. I was 17 when Fast Times at Ridgemont High came out, directed by Amy Heckerling, who also has had a very interesting career, has directed some good movies and some terrible movies, directed on and off and has worked, within the industry. Also very rock and roll oriented director. They got the right director, and she's directed some great movies and some terrible movies. Her great movies include Clueless. She directed Clueless, which is a classic, but she's also directed a lot of crap, including Fast Times at Ridgemont High. So when Fast Times at Ridgemont High came out, as I said, I was 17, and it became a huge hit everywhere. People saw it a ton of times when it came out on beta and on VHS. Some months later, it became a classic that a lot of my friends watched over and over and over and over and over again. It was one of those quintessential 80s teen sex comedies that everybody loved, everybody saw, everybody memorized all the classic lines. And it became one of the most quoted, one of the most celebrated, one of the most popular, very, very popular, box office smash teen comedies of the 80s at a time when there were teen sex comedies and titty movies coming out basically every week. And this was among them, but it was, a serious movie about written by a journalist who went undercover to expose what was really happening in the teenage world of the late 70s and early 80s and to shock people and to show them what it was really like. Well, what Fast Times at Ridgemont High turned out to be was yet another generic, stupid, shitty, teen titty sex comedy from the 80s that was interchangeable with all the other stupid teen titty sex comedies that came out during that era, like your Hot Pursuits and your Porky's and all those other stupid teen titty sex comedies that came out in the 80s. Fast Times at Ridgemont High is no better than any of those other dumbass movies. For some reason, people love this movie. For some reason, it is considered above all of the teen trash that came out in the 80s, but it's not. It happened to have a better pedigree in terms of the writing, the writer, the director. It happened to have a better a cast, and also consisting of unknowns who would go on to superstardom. But at its core, what this movie really is a really shitty, stupid, titty teen sex comedy from the 80s. It's no better than any of the other crap that came out at that time. Fraternity Vacation, same kind of shit. All of the teen sex comedies that came out at that time, all of them are the same, and this is no different. When it came out, my friends loved it. My friends went nuts over it. They were like, it's hilarious. Oh my God, it's wacky. It's so funny. It's sexy. The girls are hot in it. It shows what it's like to work in a fast food restaurant. It shows what it's like to have the problems that you have at school. What clique do you fit into? When do you lose your virginity as a girl? What's the dynamic at school? The hard teachers. You got the stoners. The burnouts. You got the jocks. You got the cheerleaders, you got the popular girls, you got the nerds, you got the people trying to fall in love, and the people trying to get laid, all of that stuff. And my friends were like, yeah, that's what's really happening. Okay, I was between junior year and senior year when that movie came out. And I have a little bit of an unusual story there, because at the time, I was dating a 22-year-old who had a kid. So it was a little bit different. I was not like trying to date girls in my class, although I had huge crushes on girls in my class. But I ended up dating my manager at McDonald's. Very unusual situation. So in the romance department and the trying to get laid department, I didn't identify with any of that stuff. I was fine in that department. But, like trying to fit in and, being a part of this and being in high school and the high school, those are all experiences that I obviously had. But nothing in Fast Times at Ridgemont High reaches any kind of crescendo beyond moronic, stupid, stereotypical titty movie teen bullshit. It's a terrible movie, and I felt that way when I was 17. Very unpopular opinion. All of my friends, when we got to, in the fall of 1982, the beginning of our senior year, everybody, all of my classmates at Luther North, went to see Fast Times a bunch of times in the theater, and it was the movie that everybody was talking about, at least the comedy that everybody was talking about when we got back to school. As a senior in high school, Fast Times at Ridgemont High was quoted all the time. Everybody was talking about the scenes. They were talking about the actors and the actresses in it. Everybody was talking about the soundtrack because it had so many great songs on it. And it was the teen movie that, everybody loved and everybody was talking about, except for me. I hated it. And I remember getting into arguments with my friends in high school who would, defend it and talk about how great it was and everything, and I would just rip it to shreds and talk about how fucking stupid it was, how base it was, and how it was no different than any other generic, stupid-ass teen sex comedy a la Porky's. So it was not a very popular opinion to have as a 17-year-old senior in high school when that movie was in theaters. When Fast Times at Ridgemont High came out, I was that audience. The characters, the age, what was happening to them, it was all supposedly happening to me, and I fucking hated it. And it, probably because I was a cinema snob, and my friends were, a lot of my friends were like, yeah, it was really funny, blah, blah, blah. Fast Times at Ridgemont High is a terrible movie. And then it becomes, even as I grew older, I hated it even more, and it became even more reprehensible and deeply disturbing, and really an awful fucking movie on so many fucking levels. Okay, let me just go through some of the cast members, as you probably remember. This being the 40th anniversary of Fast Times at Ridgemont High. And I'm sure you probably love it. If you were my age, if you were 17 when the movie came out, you probably thought it was great. You probably saw it a ton of times that summer, like every one of my friends did, except for me. And I literally was the only, I think there were maybe 2 or 3 other people that I hung out with that also hated it. There were a few of us. That's why we hung out together. I think there were about 4 or 5 of us, maybe total, that didn't like the movie, that thought it was utter horseshit, and that saw through the crap You know, my friends were everybody in high school was like, yeah, it was hilarious. It was great, man. It was hilarious. It was really accurate. It was, you know, it's us, man. It's us. No, it's not. We saw through the veil of shit to the truth of what Fast Times at Ridgemont High is, and that is a really shitty teen titty 80s sex comedy that's not different than any of the other shit. Except you did have an excellent cast. Sean Penn, obviously. And Sean Penn is great in the movie. I will say that. Now, people tend to forget that he's in roughly less than a third of the movie. Like Sean Penn, he's not a main character in the movie. He's a supporting character. He's not the main character. The main character in the movie is played by Jennifer Jason Leigh. She is, if you're going to pick a main character in the ensemble, it's kind of her journey that you follow. She's kind of the main character. People forget, Sean Penn, if you were to take all of Sean Penn's scenes and put them together, they'd probably last 12, 15 minutes, and I'm being generous. So Sean Penn's great in it, but again, he's in it this much. He's the best part of the movie. Without question, he's the best part of the movie, and he's the only thing in the movie he's the only person in the movie that generates any fucking laughs, because it's not a funny movie. So you got Sean Penn, I mentioned Jennifer Jason Leigh, you got Phoebe Cates, they play best friends, they work in the mall, you all know the story, and it's basically follows the journey of what's going on with Jennifer Jason Leigh character. She wants to, lose her virginity, and she wants it to be special. And Phoebe Cates plays the experienced girl, even though we find out she's not really that experienced, who's going to give her advice. And they all hang out in this mall where many of them work. You know, some people work in the movie theater, some people work in the restaurants and the fast food joints and all that stuff. Judge Reinhold is in it, who plays Jennifer Jason Leigh's brother. He's also one of the main characters in it. You got Brian Backer, who plays a nerd who tries to get help from his friend Richard Ramones, who is like a ticket scalper guy. And it's all about these kids spending this time together, learning about themselves, growing up, getting laid, drinking, partying, dude. Forrest Whitaker's a big football player, whose car gets wrecked and all this other stuff. The adults in the movie are played by Ray Walston, who plays a teacher, Vincent Schiavelli, who also plays a weirdo teacher, James Russo, who plays a robber, and then you have actors and actresses who show up who were nobodies when the movie came out but became huge, and that included Anthony Edwards, Nicolas Cage, Eric Stoltz, and a few more who pop up here and there. And then Taylor Negron, one of the greatest stand-up comedians, one of my favorites of all time, died too young. He played the pizza guy, also one of the only good things in the movie. So that's basically what it's about. But what this movie really is your typical stupid titty teen sex comedy. It's not funny. There's nothing in this movie that made me laugh. Everybody who quotes all the stuff from it, obviously, and then but I will say this, the soundtrack is great. They did get rights to some amazing songs, and the soundtrack, they loaded the movie. If anything, Cameron Crowe, a Cameron Crowe movie is going to have a great soundtrack. And Fast Times at Ridgemont High is a great soundtrack. And the use of music is great in it. And there are, as a 17-year-old boy watching Phoebe Cates come out of the swimming pool and open up her top to Moving in Stereo by the Cars. Anytime I ever hear Moving in Stereo by the Cars, the first thing I think of is obviously a topless, Phoebe Cates. So thank you for that. And as a 17-year-old horny kid, I wasn't immune to looking at hot girls in movies. I enjoyed that. I just wished that the movies didn't suck. I wish that the movies weren't idiotic. And so anyway, the main thing that I object about this movie, besides that it's not funny, besides that the lines that have gone down in history as classic are not classic, besides the fact that most of what happens in the movie is uninteresting and happened 87 times in 87 different movies that year alone. Aside from that, I also found the movie deeply disturbing and unbelievably misogynistic. Now, all of those titty movies from the 80s have some core of misogyny in them, and they're exploitive. And this one, though, the way that Jennifer Jason Leigh's character is treated and handled in the movie is offensive, and truly offensive considering that Amy Heckerling is obviously a woman, and that a woman directed this movie that is uncomfortably misogynistic and really awful in the way that Jennifer Jason Leigh's character is treated, and what she goes through, and how it's handled with very little to no sensitivity, and more importantly, no intelligence. I hated what Jennifer Jason Leigh, as an actress and as a character, went through in the movie. It offended me, even as a 17-year-old who liked titties, who liked butts, who liked this kind of stuff. Even I was like, man, this is really making me uncomfortable. There's nothing funny or interesting about this at all, and it's handled with incredible insensitivity and really deep misogyny and awfulness. So fuck this movie on so many levels. And then on other levels, too, like pop culture references that don't work. What was supposed to be hip in the early 80s to say and do felt stale and regurgitated and not clever. What was supposed to be knowing wasn't very knowing. It wasn't very authentic. I was 17 years old when I saw the movie. And I watched it and I went, wait a minute, are these people supposed to be representing what we say, how we behave, and what we do as 17-year-olds in 1982? Because this is foreign to me. None of it rang true. None of it was funny. None of the catchphrases or the cliches that were supposedly shown to the audience in 1982 were real. None of that shit was happening in the high school or the behavior was happening with the people that I was hanging out with as a 17-year-old when that movie came out. So it was all horse shit. And then on top of it, on the simplest of levels, a lot of the references and a lot of the jokes are either bullshit or they don't work. Chief among them is, at one point, one of the characters tells the nerd that if you want to make out with a girl, you whenever possible, put on side 1 of Zeppelin 4. Like, if you want to make out with a girl, Richard Romanus says it, or Robert Romanus. Sorry, I get him confused with his dad, who was in Mean Streets. Anyway, he says to the nerd, hey, you want to make out? Order food for her, do this for her, and of course, at any time you want to make out, put on side 1 of Led Zeppelin 4. And so, at one point, they cut to a scene with that kid, and Kashmir is playing. And that's supposed to be a laugh. But the problem is, Kashmir is on Physical Graffiti. It's not on side 2 of Zeppelin 4. So there's two ways to look at it. One, the jagoffs who made the movie don't care that Kashmir is not on Zeppelin 4, is not on side 1 of Zeppelin 4. In fact, it's not on Zeppelin 4, either side. It's on Physical Graffiti, which is an entirely different album. Either they were just stupid and said, yeah, just put a Zeppelin song on here, and it'll be like he's listening to side 4 of Zeppelin, or side 2 of Zeppelin 4, and it'll work. Okay, so either one, they just don't give a shit and they got it entirely wrong because Kashmir is on Physical Graffiti, or the inside joke, or the more clever, which is my friends try to defend it this way, is that the dorky kid is so stupid that he put on Physical Graffiti instead of Zeppelin 4. I don't buy that. Because the audience for the movie in 1982 is not going to know offhand when they hear Kashmir, oh, wait a minute, he's dumb, that's on Physical. That's not on side 1 of Zeppelin 4. I don't buy it. It was dumb, it was stupid. The filmmakers, including Cameron Crowe, were like, we don't give a fuck, just play a Zeppelin song, even if it's not on side 1 of Zeppelin 4. So I know I'm getting nitpicky, but that joke always, that moment always bothers me and always makes me go, look, this movie is fucking stupid, you idiots. Look at this. Kashmir is on Physical. It's not on side 1 of Zeppelin 4, which negates everything in this goddamn movie and is a complete representation and an example of why this movie is so fucking bad, so off, so wrong, and so stupid. It gets that wrong. I do not buy that it's a joke about how dumb the character is because he's playing the wrong Zeppelin album. I don't buy that. And even on that level, it doesn't work because you're not going to recognize it right away. It's bad. It's bad filmmaking. It's bad referencing. It's bad everything. So, anyway, I was not a popular dude with that opinion. And I'm still not popular about it because people my age, 57 years old, still love it. People of all ages love Fast Times at Ridgemont High. It's highly revered. It's loved. I don't understand it. It's a complete and utter mystery to me as to how Fast Times at Ridgemont High continues to have all the love thrown at it, all the praise thrown at it. People are like, it's one of the great teenage movies of all time. It is not one of the great teenage movies of all time. It is stupid. It's one-dimensional. It is generic. It is stereotypical. It is misogynistic. It is trash. It should be considered on the same level that you put Porky's. It's that fucking bad. It's a terrible movie. And I don't give a fuck whether you like it or not. You're wrong. It is a terrible movie. And when I saw it as a 17-year-old, the target audience was me when I saw it. I was offended by it. I thought it was stupid, and I hated every frame of it. And that still holds true. Despite the fact that Sean Penn is great in it, despite the fact that it has a great soundtrack, and despite the fact that a lot of the people and cast members have went on to do great things, award-winning things, and they've become classic actors and actresses. Despite the fact that Ray Walston is in the movie, and he's always great, and Taylor Negron, one of my favorite stand-up comedians of all time, the late great Taylor Negron, is also in it. Despite some of these things, at its core, Fast Times at Ridgemont High, you're going to have to face it, is a shitty movie. So, happy 40th anniversary to Fast Times at Ridgemont High. Like I said before, it came out on August 13th, 1982, same day as Friday the 13th, Part 3 in 3D. And you know what movie's better? Friday the 13th, Part 3 in 3D. And yeah, Friday the 13th, Part 3 in 3D is a piece of shit. But it's better than Fast Times at Ridgemont High. So, learn. Fast Times at Ridgemont High is crap.